right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Another Bourbon Show. Tonight, we are going to be drinking from my very favorite distillery. If you've watched a couple of our episodes, you know who that is, but we're going to be drinking some Michter's Rye. We're continuing on with our month of ryes. Before we do anything else, Steven, what do you think of that label?
Well, I already rated the Michter's label last time, and this one's really like not much different at all. But I like the Michter's label. I think maybe I gave it a 7, something like that, somewhere in that range, 6
I
maybe.
could actually look it up.
I won't talk while
Oh,
you're
you gave it a 5.
I gave it a 5.
I was gonna say I have it up
Okay.
here too. Yeah,
I
Yeah,
think
you
the
gave it
five,
a 5.
I think the 5 was a little harsh in retrospect now that we've been talking about a few more labels. So maybe I would bump it up to like a 6 or 7. I think it's above average, I would say, and maybe I was a little bit harsh on it. I liked the whiskey last time. I remember that. But the label to me, I think one of the knocks I gave it last time was that it kind of has like a font I don't like that much, which reminds me a little bit of like Monster Energy drink or something like that. So I'll say that again this time. I still don't love the font that much, but I think it's fine. It's above average. I don't really like that it's just sealed with the paper on top. Not a huge fan of that. I wish they would do plastic or something else, but other than that, it's...
Well, there's plastic when you buy it.
I feel like I haven't seen it with plastic in store.
Yeah, there's a cellophane top.
Okay, well, as long as that's the case, then no complaints about the topper then.
might have
I retract that. I thought it was just paper for some reason.
you might have bought. Have you bought a Michter's bottle?
No.
Might want to dump it out.
Did you buy one out of the Did you buy one out of the trunk of a 84
I was
Riviera? What the fuck?
A Dateline episode once. Remember that guy would take Tylenol bottles and switch them with cyanide
The
pills?
Tylenol murders, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You remember that guy who would kill people? The Zodiac sign guy? What was his name?
So, but Steven, you kept saying 6 or a 7. Which is it?
I'm going to give it a 6.
A 6. Okay.
Yeah, just because I'd give it a 7 if I like the font a little more.
By the way,
Okay.
Steven, do you know your lowest rated bottle that you've given? Not bottle, but the lowest rated
Label
you've given.
I would offhand, I would just guess mellow corn, but I don't know to a certainty.
That is not. It is Smoke Wagon Small Batch. You gave it 2.
Oh, right.
Gave it a 2.
That's correct. Yeah.
A 2.
You gave Blanton's a 3. And those are the
that's a
two-
good rating for
Yeah.
Blanton's.
I mean, I like the Blanton's bottle.
You
but
give a lot of 4s, man. A lot of 4s.
You first started grading them based on like letter grades, but now it's numbers, which I like more.
Yeah, same. I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, so tonight we're going to be drinking some Michter's single barrel Kentucky straight rye. It's their US 1 version, so they're entry level to Michter's. You can pick it up for $45 pretty much anywhere in Illinois and pretty much nowhere in Missouri. I don't know why Missouri doesn't carry it. But I want to throw out there that like if you're someplace and they don't, not just Illinois, Missouri, but across the nation, if they don't carry Michter's US 1 rye, it's not allocated. It's not allocated anywhere across the country. This is their entry level. This is the type of stuff that Michter's allocations are based on. The sale of this is what determines who gets the ability to sell Michter's 10, toasted barrel, etc., etc. So if you like it, ask just go to your grocery store, ask for the liquor manager and ask them to start carrying it, because they certainly have the opportunity. They have the ability. They're just, for whatever reason, choosing not to. But I did mention
that goes up the ladder corporately though too. A lot of these stores can't get stuff in because if it doesn't scan in their system, that it just won't come in ever. So you might have better look at like a mom and pop liquor store because they don't have a scanning type deal. Most of them, unless they're a big chain.
Yeah.
And actually, it just so happens that there's plenty of stuff I can't get on this show. But locally around me, for whatever reason, a lot of the places have Michter's rye.
Well,
So
I'm glad to hear that because like in the different like social media groups that I'm in, people from that are like across the river in Missouri, they're like, "Oh, look what I was able to score," and I'm like, "Dude, you can get that at fucking Schnucks anytime you want to. Like
yeah,
I can, like I don't have to go to a liquor store. I can literally wherever I want to go. I'm surprised Casey's doesn't sell it. Like they could sell it if they wanted to. They just choose not to. So I'm glad to hear that it's available in the St. Charles, St. Peter's area. That's good.
yeah. I don't think I've ever seen the sour mash around here, but I've seen the bourbon and I've seen the rye.
Okay. Okay. And not the whiskey. The
I think
so,
one time I've seen it, but that's what I
okay.
was on the lookout for because I remember you early on saying that I should try that one. You thought I would like that one,
Oh, it's such a good mixer.
and
It like
that one
it
I
is.
think I've only seen it one time, and I passed on it at the time, and I think I got an Uncle Nearest at that time,
Oh, okay.
um,
Okay.
and I haven't seen it since. So
Yeah. Well, anytime you're over here, they've got it. So yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah. Go ahead.
they have a toasted rye now, don't they? Or
Yeah. I mean, it's
I
limited
mean, not
release.
yeah. That's one I'm itching to try
That's
at some point. Is that one right there?
that one. That's that one. And then they this is the 2020 release. They have a 2021 release that wasn't able to grab one of those. And then I've got the toasted sour mash, but they have like that's for 2018 or 2019 2018 bottling, and they haven't done a toasted sour mash since then. Um so I want them to come out with their next toasted bourbon. Like they just throw those out there every now and then, and they are all so damn good. But anyway, so tonight we're drinking this one, just the US1 standard old straight rye. The SRP on it is $45. It's a single barrel product. It's an 84.8 proof, which is really low, but that is not uncommon for Michters. One of the things that I like so much about Michters is that they actually barrel their whiskeys, all of them, at a really low proof. They go into the barrel at 102. Most other distilleries, they put their stuff into the barrel at 112, 114, all the way up to 125, like 1792. Their stuff goes in at 125. The reason that matters is that going into that barrel at the lower proof, it maintains more of the flavor of the grains and the yeast that went into creating it. So you get more flavor out of it without needing to drink it at that high proof level. So it's one of the outliers, if you will. A lot of times, on this show, even we've talked about with the higher proof, you get more flavor. Well, with Michter's, you get a ton of flavor even at a low proof because it went into the barrel at a low proof anyway. So this does not have an age statement, but it is a straight rye. Straight rye whiskey means that it's been aged at least 2 years. So that's the best we can do on that. And we don't know the mash bill. All we know for a fact is that it's at least 51% rye. So what do you say? We want to give it a go?
let's do it.
Cheers.
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 Dan, do you know what the highest proof product Michter's makes is?
It would be a one-off of one of so whenever they do like a toasted rye or a toasted sour mash, it's always pretty much always barrel proof. But for example, this is a barrel proof, and even after aging, it's still only a 108.2 proof. So yeah, it spent however many years in a barrel. While it's in the barrel, it of course some of the water evaporates, so the proof goes up. And even after all of that aging and all that evaporation, the devil's cut, if you will, or angel's share, sorry, the angel's share, if you will, it still is only come up to 108.2.
Gotcha.
Interesting.
What do you think of the nose?
It's almost like appley in
I
a
was
way,
gonna
or
say
citrusy.
it's like a
Yeah,
Tennessee whiskey in that way.
Mm-hmm. I can
yeah.
see that. Yeah.
And of course, you get smells real oaky too. But I mean, that's kind of a given. I get a lot of apple. A lot of apple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get apple. I get vanilla. Um, I get a little bit of cherry off the nose, and then on like whenever I take a sip of it, I get a real like immediately a pop of that spice, the rye spice, the pepperiness from that rye, and then it's got a nice sweetness in my opinion too, like a pepper with a sweetness. I think to me it's just a fantastic rye, and yeah, it's got like a I don't know, like a almost like a candy corn type of a sweetness to it, and I don't even like candy corn, but I love the flavor of their rye.
The finish, it reminds me a lot of like a weeder.
Mm-hmm. I
It's
can see
not.
that.
There's so many. So I mean, it's crazy. It's such a low proof, and you get all these profiles and characters of it. They do a really good job. It is really
Ah,
sweet. I'm sure this will probably mesh well with a Manhattan. I'm sure you're probably. I'm excited to drink that.
yeah. So the last couple episodes for Rye Month, we had the Old Overholt, and then we had the Rittenhouse Rye, and I said that those are the only two bourbon or only two ryes you should be making a Manhattan with on a regular basis. Um, and I still maintain that. But I do also think that every now and then, if you want to splurge and use a more expensive rye in a Manhattan, then go for it. And this Michter's rye to me is makes a fabulous Manhattan. But I also think that it's wasteful to make a Manhattan every time. Like if you drink a Manhattan 2 times a week, I don't, and I mean, unless you make more money than I do, then I don't think you should be using Michter's rye for every one of those Manhattans. Just go with if you like this profile, then go with the Rittenhouse. They're similar enough that this is just a little bit better. Just my opinion.
Yeah,
But you make your own money, do whatever the fuck you want with it. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I think the finish on this one for me is like what makes it immediately stand out more than Rittenhouse, for instance, that we had last week.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's just a really interesting finish that is not really what I've found in other ryes that I've had, at least recently. Um, and yeah, that's really the standout for me so far, and I really like it because of that.
Well, I do think that um, I think that Michter's rye is kind of a I wouldn't say that it's their best of their US one products because like to me that's kind of based on your personal opinion. But they are really known for having a good rye, and it makes sense because if you go way back to the Michter's Sour Mash episode, I talked about how that company originated in
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. And rye is a northern grain, and we've carried that conversation on the last two, that Old Overholt and Rittenhouse are both based on Pennsylvania ryes. Um, and Michter's being a Pennsylvania company, it makes sense that their rye would be a really strong competitor for their best spirit. So there you go. That's what I want to say.
I wonder how many people just don't even give Michter's a chance because of the lower proof in the whiskey. I'm sure it turns a lot of people away, and they go without trying any other products just because I'm not gonna get the buzz I want. I'm not gonna spend that kind of money for a lower proof whiskey. I'm sure it happens.
No, so just the other day, within the past 3 weeks, I was talking about how um, the Michter's toasted sour mash. I was having a pour of that, And on social media, I posted something along the lines of, make me a list of pours that are better than this one. Yes, they exist, but there's so few of them. That's my take. And somebody who's probably never drank Michter's goes, well, yeah, but that toasted sour mash has a proof of 86. And I said, and there was no reply after that. But that just goes to prove, Steve, Ryan, that you're exactly right. There probably are people, and there's a lot of people that I know in the bourbon communities that are all about high proof. All they want is high proof, and I think that, and I'm going to use a word, and I'm going to use the dictionary version of it. I don't mean this as a put down. I think it's ignorance. And I don't mean that in a negative connotation. Ignorance actually means you don't know. The only thing you know for sure when you're looking at proof is how quickly it will get you drunk. That's it. Everything else is completely circumstantial. Most of the time, a high proof equals a higher flavor, but not always. All you know for 100% fact is how quickly it's going to get you drunk. So,
yeah, I agree completely. I mean, that's what I see across the board. Oh, well, what's the proof? What's the proof? That's how I know it's good. It's like, oh, it's not always the case,
yep.
Like sometimes it's nice to get, that kick in the mouth, but this is nice too. And I mean, you drink it and you still get that Kentucky hug. You still get but like it feels like a higher proof than what it is too. It's deceiving in that way.
Well, and I think that part of that is you get so much flavor from it that you assume that it's the higher proof, right?
Like, it's almost like an anomaly. I don't see many distilleries doing this.
I mean, there's a reason why Michter's is my favorite distillery. Like I like what they do. I like everything that they put out.
I wonder
to varying degrees.
Sorry, Dan.
No, you're good.
If that higher proof, people can say that it's because you typically maybe get more flavor from the higher proof, but I wonder if at least part of that is like a snobbishness because a lot of the top sellers are low proof. You know what I mean? And just an aversion to maybe Jim Beams and Jack Daniels and things like that. I wonder if you have people kind of, turn their nose up at it because it's just, oh, well, I'm an experienced whiskey drinker and I prefer barrel proof stuff. I mean, do you think there's at least some part of that in there too?
I don't think any whiskey drinkers turns their nose up to anything. Oh, it definitely happens.
No, yeah,
it definitely happens.
Steven, you're dead on. There's at least a good percentage of people that is what crosses their mind, and I know for a fact that there's plenty of people who they believe that like they're big on bottled and bond because that way it's only 50% water and then the other 50% is alcohol, and they're like, well, if it's not at least 50% alcohol, then the company's basically robbing me. And I'm like, yeah, but no, like that's not really how it works. Like those lower proof, like your Jim Beams, your Jack Daniels, your 80 proofers, a lot of those, yeah, they're watered down to 80% for the mass market to be able to put as much on the shelf as they can as quickly as possible. But Michter's is not, they're not a big company. They only became considered, they used to be considered a craft distillery. They just passed the, number of barrels barreled per year to move them out of that craft category, 2 years ago, something like that. And, that kind of tells you they're not bottling it at a low proof to put as much on the shelf as possible. That's not their goal. When I forget his first name, and it's Magliocco, the owner. When he bought the name for Michter's, Like he had every intention of making it like a high-end bourbon. And you're not going to try to make a high-end bourbon and water your product down just to put shit on the shelves. That doesn't happen. So so with Michter's, that's not the case. But that is probably why a lot of people avoid it or don't give it the respect that it deserves, in my opinion, or even give it a try. So,
Well, I think this is if you guys are fine with it, this is a good segue into one of the items I told you I wanted to talk about tonight, Dan, which was the.
I'm going to start sipping on the Manhattan too, by the way. Just at your leisure, do the same.
In defense of the whiskey douches that I know we've been calling out recently with the whiskey douche segments, but one of the things I've been thinking a lot about recently is how, one, there's a lot of bad stores out there. There's a lot of predatory stores, as we talk about a good deal as well. And between that and sort of the secondary prices, I think that there comes to a point with the average person where you only have so much money to spend on whiskey, maybe. Um, and maybe stretching that a little bit with this example, granted, but let's say there's somebody who really wants a bottle of Blanton's. Maybe they have a special occasion coming up or something like that. They buy it for $200 on the secondary market. Okay. It seems like there's a lot of places in the U.S. where the only way you would have a chance at Blanton's otherwise, as this person, would be to buy maybe average $50 a month spent or $100 a month spent at your local liquor store, get into a lottery, and eventually get it anyway. Assuming that the store is doing nothing to, assuming your local, maybe closest store is doing nothing to earn your loyalty there and get you to come in every week and spend $100 for the chance at buying, Blanton's at what is hopefully going to be MSRP. What reason does that person have to not go spend $200 on Blanton's on a secondary market? Is it still a douche move, in your opinion?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Because if you had a $20 bill in your hand, and you said, if you want this $20 bill, you've got to pay me $40. That's just fucking dumb. That $20 bill is not worth $40. Blanton's is not worth $200.
I agree, but just to be clear, so what I'm saying, I don't disagree with you. Blanton's not worth $200. What I'm saying is the cost proposition is potentially even worse from those liquor stores if the end goal is to get Blanton's, if that's their end goal. Obviously, you'd get bourbon along the way, presumably by buying into that program from the liquor store. Yeah. But otherwise, if the goal is getting Blanton's, if that's the goal, you end up spending potentially more money in their programs in order to get that Blanton's.
And I'm saying that, like, so I guess where my perspective is that even in the $60 to $70 price range, Blanton's is not the best $60 to $70 bottle available on a shelf. There are better bourbons on the shelf that are easily available, or not even necessarily readily available, but easier to acquire than Blanton's. So if you want Blanton's that bad, that's the douchey part of it. Just the desire to want Blanton's that badly, that's the douchey part. Because there's so much great bourbon available that's better than Blanton's. Blanton's is really good. Don't get me wrong. At $60 to $65, Blanton's is hard to beat, but there's other stuff that's really good. Potentially better. Like I would go with Smoke Wagon Uncut Unfiltered, by the way. You give me a chance to have a Smoke Wagon Uncut, Unfiltered, or Blanton's. Blanton's you get to brag about. Smoke Wagon Uncut, Unfiltered, you drink to enjoy. There, I'm not big on barrel, broadly speaking, but there are some of their batches that are in that $65 to $75 range, and they are better than Blanton's. And by spending $200 on a bottle of Blanton's, you just encouraged sellers to continue selling Blanton's for $200 instead of saying, I'm going to walk away and buy 4 bottles of mellow corn.
Well, see, but that's what I'm saying. So I agree with the first part of what you're saying, but the second part of what you're saying, I think that liquor stores do that too, though, because I think that they play into each other and they play into the overall market. I don't think it's just the secondary market and the douches willing to buy that whiskey. It's also the liquor stores. If the liquor stores are saying to get this bottle, and I know they have to do it. I'm not saying they do this out of like greed or whatever, to be fair to their customers or whatever. But whenever you set up those like price points that you have to hit per month or whatever to get to so many tickets or whatever, whenever you hit those things, you are saying that Michter's becomes a more valuable commodity because of that.
Sure. But now, I do want to throw out there real quick, though, that you're once again talking about chains. Okay. If you go into a mom and pop shop, it doesn't very rarely. Now, okay, let me restate this. When you go into a mom and pop shop, they do for sure take how much you've spent, how much they know you've spent into account, but they're not tracking it. It matters more in those types of places. Are you talking to the cashier? Genuinely having a conversation with these people. Like, we've had Ryan on the show from Dean's. I go in there probably once a week. I would say I buy something, a bottle, maybe once a month. I buy cigarettes while I'm there. I might grab a Coke out of his cooler. I'm spending money, but it's not high cost stuff. But I'm there to actually like the side benefit is having access to buy stuff, hard to get stuff. The benefit is that Ryan's a kick-ass fucking dude. All of the folks that work for Bobby in Glenmart BP, his Maryville location, or Lebanon, they are great people. The benefit to me is I'm getting to chat with some really awesome people. The side benefit is having access to be able to buy hard to get stuff. So I get what you're saying, but I still think it's really douchey.
There is a huge segment of people though who don't know the market, who don't know a lot about whiskey, and they see blends as this luxurious thing. You know, when you see the bottle and the packaging, it's cool, and a lot of people look to buy it as a gift or to give to somebody, you know, a loved one. So,
and the smartest thing they're the two smartest things they've ever done as far as marketing for Blanton's go is provide a dump date and those goddamn letters on the fucking horses. Nonstop. Oh, I'm looking for this specific date because that's the day my daughter was born. Okay. You know what? That's the only time I get spending $250. You want to spend $250 to get a dump date that's the same as your daughter's birthday or your anniversary? Cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Ryan, go ahead, bud.
Oh, no, you're not. I just feel like there's a big segment of people who come in looking for Blanton's and might get rolled over by a liquor store. And not even that the liquor stores, I mean, they shouldn't be selling these things that high either. But when you look on the other side of it, their margins are so low. So they probably see Blanton's as this thing to propel their sales for the day or, you know, for that month. So it's hard to fault liquor stores for doing that with a bottle of Blanton's when they're making like 20 cents on a case of Coors Light, you know? Because then you can just go into a Walmart and buy a case for cheaper. So they have other things to compete against too. But I just feel like there's some aspects we're kind of overlooking here. But to buy a bottle of Blanton's for $250 and then to brag about it online, I think is the douchey part of it.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And I agree with what you're saying, Dan. I would agree that having that be your preference or your need over something at those lower price points or at the same MSRP even potentially is the douchey aspect, which that's not what I was considering. So I get that. But I just think in my particular scenario that I was stating, I think that it can be defensible to go in that direction because it could be the cheaper way to get Blantons if that's what you want. Just objectively, that being your goal without judgment, I think it's just how the market works. If there's going to be 5 Blantons allocated in your area, depending on where you live, if there's just, let's say there's 5 dedicated to that area, your chances of getting them, if you're not a regular already, we've talked about this in the past. It's like, if you want this particular whiskey, Blanton's aside, if it's just some whiskey that's coveted, it can be a tough sell to be like, okay, well, you gotta become a regular at this place, or maybe you're too late. Maybe you really want that release all of a sudden, but you're too late to form those relationships. Now all of a sudden you've got one way to possibly get that. And either way, you're still talking from a pure money standpoint, and you're not talking about virtue of meeting people and building relationships with people in your community. Either way, you're talking about spending a significant amount of money for the chance to get a whiskey. So in that way, anybody who participates in that on either side, just with the goal of getting that whiskey, is a douche.
Yeah. Well, so one thing I want to throw out there though is that, like, Stephen, with the situation you presented, in my opinion, okay, let's exclude trying to get a specific dump date. Exclude that. Because I do grasp that, because that's an emotional tie. Okay. So throw that out. You're not a douche if you're looking for dump date 12/13/2019 because that's your daughter or son's birthday or anniversary, whatever the hell happened. Anyway, but just generally speaking, I think that given the situation, the scenario that you provided, I think that that's a financially responsible douche, but still a douche. Okay, because I'm not kidding you. There are next week and the week after, during Rye Month, there are things that we're going to be drinking that, in my opinion, blow Blantons out of the water, completely out of the water. Many of them are more readily available and less expensive than Blantons. Now, those are ryes. The bourbon aspect is a little bit harder. Buffalo Trace, man, their marketing is so goddamn good.
I said Blanton's, by the way, in my example, just because that's a stereotypical one.
Yeah,
and I didn't intentionally want to say something where you're like, well, that's a really good one. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to give one where it's like, old Rip Van Winkle or something like that. I wanted to give something that was like more clearly you could get this.
Yeah,
you could get this.
Give Buffalo Trace and Sazerac credit. I mean,
they deserve
there's no one doing what they're doing. I mean, just from like a media and word of mouth perspective, there's nothing like it. So and you wonder why these things are so hard to get. I mean, these other distilleries can replicate what they're doing, and if they wanted to kind of rip off their idea, their game plan, you can do it. And over the course of a few years, things get harder to find. Like Booker's is getting hard to find. So maybe there's some of that aspect going in there, but these other distilleries have to set up they do have to step up their game if they want to compete with that. I think whenever I have a kid, I'll have him do T-ball. I don't know though, because I just do not want to be part of a baseball season as a dad. 80 games in a year, whatever it is. I remember playing baseball as a kid. It was just that episode of South Park where each team is trying to lose. There's nothing funnier, because once you're like 4 months into the season, you're like, all right, let's wrap this up,
Well, I mean, this is T-ball. It's like 16 games.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I don't know what kind of insane T-ball league you've been around, but 80 game T-ball league.
I said I'd probably do T-ball, but like a baseball league after,
Yeah.
I mean, because that's introductory into baseball.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd like doing that. One game a week is probably my max.
Yeah, I think that football is probably the best in that regard because you just
Yeah.
got the one game a week and it's a pretty short season, but then you got to deal with all like the CTE afterwards, which takes up a lot of time.
Drooling on yourself, yeah.
Well, guys, what do you say we go ahead and give? I mean, we've talked a lot about a lot of things tonight, but what do you say we go ahead and rate this one?
Yeah, let's do it.
It works.
Who feels brave to go first?
I guess I can.
All right.
I really thought I liked it more than the sour mash, I feel like, but not by much. I really like the apple. It was real appley to me, like almost green apple. On the nose and drinking it, it was very similar in that regard. A lot of complexities. You get that pepperiness once you like put it in your mouth and drink it, and then it kind of opens up to citrus and apple.
Hey, Ryan, before you give your score, I've got a question.
Yeah.
How did you like it in the Manhattan compared to the Rittenhouse and the Old Overholt too?
Last week we did the Rittenhouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was definitely my favorite in the Manhattan.
Even
For
over
sure.
the Michters?
Yeah, even over the Michters. I thought it just
Okay.
kind of meshed a little bit better. I think I prefer drinking this straight just because of that apple and citrusy. It's a little oaky, but not too much. The pepper, it doesn't like it doesn't, your palate isn't, a lot of times you'll get these ryes and it's just all pepper, just punching you in the face. And something that's at 84 proof and is this complex, it's awesome. And they're doing a good job. So I'm going to give it a 7.9 out of 10.
I think
So
that's a solid score.
Almost an 8, but maybe when I try that toasted rye, we'll get into the 8s. Let you drink it all, asshole.
Wait, which one?
The toasted rye, unless you drink it all.
No. I've still got plenty of that left.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, still plenty of it left. Steven, do you want me to go next, or do you want to go next?
It doesn't matter to me either way.
I'll go. How about that? So, Michter's is my favorite distillery. I am a full-fledged fanboy of Michter's. I am self-professed. The two things you can guarantee that I will always talk up are any Michter's product and mellow corn. That's my sweet spot. And Michter's rye is right at the top of that. Even though it's a $45 bottle, I think it puts 90% of the market to shame. Everything that Ryan just mentioned as far as complexity and the sweetness and the flavors you pick up at such a low proof, I don't care about how fast I get drunk. If I want to get drunk, I'll just drink more of it. That's how I am. So I'm going to give it a 7.9. And I don't remember Ryan, what did you give it?
7.9.
So there you go. I'm giving it a 7.9 also. And that's why.
Well, I'm giving it a 7.9 also.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Did we all really have that in mind?
Yeah, that's so
I did.
You'll see me after both of you said that. I'm kind of smiling and laughing because that's what I had in mind the entire time. And I was like, part of me was like, do I want to go a little bit higher than Ryan? But I try my best not to be. I try my best to either go first or not be affected by you guys' ratings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just like, I'm going to go with it. But it's so close to being an 8 for me, or being an 8. So that's why when you said 7.9, I was like, I think maybe I like it more than Ryan. But the more I thought about it, I was like, no, there's a reason I'm giving it a 7.9. I'm going to stick with it. And I'll echo almost everything you said, Ryan, because I liked the Rittenhouse Manhattan a little bit better. But just drinking it straight, I liked the Michter's better, but only by a little bit as well. So I just think it's really good. I would have it straight or in the Manhattan. Whereas with the Rittenhouse, I think I would more likely have it in the Manhattan only. But I feel like both are going to end up in my bar. for what it's worth. So I really liked both. They both definitely have a place. I think that Michter's is it's really amazing what Michter's can do with the low proof whiskey and all the flavor they're able to bring out with it. And I think I'm in a unique position where I had the toasted rye before I had this rye.
You did.
So it's a little tough in my head to separate how good that was from what I'm drinking now. I'm a little spoiled in that way. But man, yeah, it's 7.9 is a really solid score, and it's a really good whiskey.
That's the first time in the show's history where we all had the same score, by the way.
I want to throw out there that when we had Alan Bishop on the show, I talked up having a Sazerac cocktail. This and a Sazerac cocktail. Holy shit. Just throwing that out there. So if you've got some absinthe available, when we drink that son of a bitch, I will be drinking a Sazerac. And I suggest you both have, at this point, right now, this moment, as soon as you receive that will be the culmination of you having everything you need to make a Sazerac cocktail. So maybe I'll send this along next shipment as well. Just a little bit.
To me.
To have a Saz.
Yeah, because I have like one more sip and mine's gone.
Good for you. Man, I'm so glad. Am I pulling you guys into the Michter's Distillery cult of holy shit, how are these guys making such good stuff?
I mean, I've had 3 products from them now, and I've liked all of them. So, I mean, they've got to be right up there with one of my favorite distillers right now. I have no reason to not put them up there. What's funny, what I was going to mention earlier, is that Buffalo Trace is kind of a double-edged sword, right? Like on one hand, you might have like some problems with them, not like personally with them, but just problems overall with what they sort of mean in the bourbon community. But unquestionably, they brought a lot of people into the bourbon world as well.
Oh, they're the reason. They're the reason for the bourbon boom.
Right.
And like I mean, they're the source of it.
I'm one of them too, because Buffalo Trace was initially sort of my foray into like actually liking whiskey. I had had other whiskey before, but Buffalo Trace was the first one that I really liked. And then, but here I am now, as I try more and more whiskey, I get pulled more and more away from the Buffalo Trace lineup, and I find out all these other distilleries that I'm really liking. So I would say the Michter's is right up there at that point, at this point for me.
Another bourbon show.
So, I was itching to open a bourbon that I've never had before. I've never had it, and I'm itching to open it. And I was thinking about having a pour of it right now. And it's that one.
Michter's?
10-year rye.
Open it.
Yeah, do it. Have a pour right now. Do it, dude. Give it a rating. Give it a pour rating.
Okay.
I love Michter's 10.
And I've never had their 10-year rye. I've had their 10-year bourbon. That's my second bottle, and I've got an unopened one. And this was a... Let's see. This is barrel 20. So it was bottled in 2020, and the specific barrel number was E905. Almost identical nose to the standard Michter's rye. Softer though. Like much softer. Much oakier. Oh. Caramel on the back end is like holy shit. But no peppery spice to it at all. Like there's none. Like I would never guess that this was a rye.
So you think it's lower in rye percentages on their actual standard?
No,
rye?
I just think that having it barreled longer takes some of that spice away from it. Like like if you poured a glass of this blind, I would say, oh, this is a bourbon. This is 51% corn at least. This was worth every bit of the trade for a Weller Full Proof. Now, recognize that I paid $55 for a bottle of Weller Full Proof, and whoever traded me that for this paid $130 for this. Fucking I made out like a goddamn bandit. Because this is head and shoulders better than a standard Weller Full Proof.
Did you make that trade with somebody from our fantasy football team? Because it seems like you fleeced somebody again. This joke of a league that we're in.